Hey, what's going on, guys? Tom14 here, and welcome to round number 17 of the Kimi Raikkonen Formula 1 2015 career mode. As you can see, we are in Mexico, so the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez is now a circuit that we're finally going to do this career mode. We're finally going to get to it. And just having a look at the Constructors' Championship there, we are miles clear of Mercedes and the rest of the field. But getting into the qualifying report now for the Mexican Grand Prix. As you can see, pretty spectacular grandstand there in the in-stadium section of this new Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez circuit. I'll probably find an excuse to say that as many times as I can. But it's going to be a circuit that's not going to be particularly suited to the McLaren Hondas with the long back straight and the high altitude. So it's going to be a struggle for them in this qualifying, but let's get into the qualifying.
So we had the Manners woes continuing in Q1 with both Manners failing to get through to Q2, but there's no surprises there with the Manor team, unfortunately, just struggling for finances, struggling to develop with the car this year. Of course, the 2014 car updated 2015 spec, so it's going to be a difficult year for them, as you'd expect. McLaren Honda, as predicted, struggling with Jenson Button down in P16 in the field, but of course, you know, Honda looking to improve for next year, and with contracts about Jenson Button and conversation going around, will he stick around for 2016? Nico Rosberg had a dismal qualifying down in P20 after failing to set a competitive lap time in Q1 due to engine issues, and then he got disqualified for parking in a dangerous position as deemed by the FIA, so an unlucky result for him. Fernando Alonso, though, in Q2 managed to get his McLaren Honda through, but could only manage P15. As predicted, McLaren would struggle in this Grand Prix, but nonetheless an impressive result for Fernando in Q2. Carlos Sainz being the best of the Spanish bunch in P14 in his Toro Rosso, but not quite enough to get through to Q3, and also quite a fair way off his teammate Max Verstappen. Nico Hülkenberg once again being out-qualified by his teammate Sergio Perez, who managed to qualify his Force India in 12th position, with Nico Hülkenberg struggling with the balance whole weekend, and of course the Mexican, being his home Grand Prix, would have wished to have got through to Q3, but nevertheless P12 is a good starting place, gives him great option to choose what tyre to go on for the start of the race. And of course Max Verstappen, P11, so close to getting into the top 10 for an impressive debut season for the Dutchman, but just not quite able to get that performance out of the Toro Rosso into the top 10. So qualifying 3 got underway, and Pastor Maldonado qualifying his Lotus in P10, of course with the Mercedes engine in the back of that Lotus, so giving them good straight line speed in the first sector, but struggling throughout the rest of the sector. Of course, Lotus being strapped for cash this season, and Romain Grosjean also getting into the top 10, so both Lotuses in Q3 with Grosjean qualifying in P9. A good result for the Enstone teams and gives them a great chance to score points for tomorrow's race. Felipe Nasr managed to get an impressive result for Sauber up into P10 again, another team strapped for cash, but proving that Sauber do have a good car in a straight line. Of course, with very little downforce on that car, he's able to get his car through that first sector. Danny Kvyat qualifying P7 after traffic behind Sebastian Vettel in Q3, so would have wished for something a little bit more, but Red Bull with that Renault engine just struggling a bit too much this season. Ericsson confirming Sauber's pace up in P6, so once again showing their low downforce, low drag setup is really working out for the Sauber team in this circuit at Mexico. Daniel Ricciardo qualifying his Red Bull in P5 despite their Renault engine woes, managing to put that downforce to good use throughout the rest of the circuit, so watch out for Red Bull possibly being a threat in the middle and last sector. Sebastian Vettel managing to qualify his Ferrari up into P3 ahead of Felipe Massa, who qualified in P4 for Williams, so there could be threats for the win as they weren't too far off. Valtteri Bottas getting an impressive front row as Nico Rosberg went out in Q1, so he's managed to take the opportunity and get a front row position for the Williams team at Mexico. But that just left Lewis Hamilton to get pole position here in Mexico in his Mercedes. No surprise there. Gives him a great chance to win this Mexican Grand Prix. Of course, the last driver to win in Mexico was Nigel Mansell in 1992, so can Lewis Hamilton be the next British driver to win in Mexico. But there's a look at the top 10 with Sebastian Vettel in P3, Valtteri Bottas P2 and Lewis Hamilton in pole position. Check out the race, it's going to be a cracker.
So here we are, guys, lining up on the grid for the Mexican Grand Prix. We're actually in P19 because, of course, Nico Rosberg got disqualified in qualifying for parking in a dangerous position. So that promotes us one place up into the grid, thankfully, after Kimi Raikkonen's issues in P3 with his engine, not being able to change the engine in time. But anyway, enough talk about that. Let's start the race. There's 3 lights, 4 lights now, 5 red lights. And away we go for the Mexican Grand Prix. And we actually get a shocking start compared to the rest of the field. But Nico Rosberg gets an absolute cracker. So I think our plan, what we're going to try and do, is just try and stick with Nico here and just file our way through the traffic. He's one of the front runners. Of course, he was fighting. Well, he's not fighting for the championship anymore. But of course, being in the Mercedes, he is one of the top runners in this field. But we're sort of getting pushed out by the McLarens and the Mercedes there, so we've only made 2 positions off the start, which is pretty embarrassing for us because the only 2 positions we've made up are the Manners. So that's pretty bad there, but we're just going to filter our way past the McLaren Hondas. It's crucial to get past them in the early stages of the race, of course. Them not having the straight line speed, there might be a bit of a bust through the corners because, of course, they've got to defend somehow or another. But we're closing in on the back of Nico Rosberg now. We're driving pretty cautiously, it has to be said, for Kimi Raikkonen. Of course, the past few Grand Prix have been a bit aggressive with some of the overtakes. We try and go around the outside, but there's just no room, so we have to hop over that curb there, not gaining any time from that. So we're going to try and filter our way up the inside of a few cars here, catch a few napping, and there we are. That's 3 positions now we've made up coming into this new brilliant infield stadium, I have to say. Although it's a bit of a worry for me, that stadium, because I've always said, what happens if there's a fan who just decides to lob something, like, in the middle of the track, you know? For me, I don't know, that would be a bit of a worry. It does look cool, nevertheless, but, you know, just for me, as soon as I saw that, I just instantly thought, hang on, that didn't seem right. It didn't seem like there's a few safety issues with that. But anyway, getting past Max Verstappen now for P12 in this race, so we're pretty close to the points already, which is crucial. Well, it's not really crucial because, again, we've had the championship done now, but just for the sake of ending the season on a high with Ferrari. Of course, Kimi Raikkonen, although he's won the championship, there's still discussion about whether he will retire at the end of this season with the 2nd World Championship we've just gained with him. So there's plenty of discussion still to be done. People still questioning, believe it or not, Kimi Raikkonen this season, but we just try and go up the inside of Nasser and Grosjean, but we just overcook it a bit too much on the brakes. But coming on to lap 3, and you can see Grosjean and Nasser having this ding-dong battle, and we're going to try and do the cutback on both of them there. Brilliant piece of driving. Oh my god! Wow. Okay, then we've just had contact with Grosjean. We're going to have a look at a replay, see what even happened there. Did Grosjean swerve at us? Or no! We sort of drift left naturally to try and take back the racing line, not even realising that Grosjean was there. There we are. We're going to have a look on board with Grosjean. So you'll see coming down here. Yeah, see, we're just coming across oh so slightly. And that's put both of us in the wall. We've both lost our front wings. And already at the end of lap 3, we're into the pits for another set of tyres and a front wing change. So it's just going bad to worse for Kimi Raikkonen in these races. Of course, they've all been a bit scrappy, really. Russia, USA, and now Mexico at the start. But we've gone on to a set of the prime tyres just to see how far we can take them, because you never know in Mexico what the weather's going to play out like. So we just thought we'll leave it. We'll go on to prime tyres. Hopefully we can pray for some sort of miracle with the rain dance or whatever, just as people have to make a stop for soft tyres or whatever. And just hope our strategy can pay off, basically. Going on to prime tyres, taking them a bit longer, but we've managed to come on to, well, up into 14th position on lap 7, so that's not too bad. We've made up a couple of positions considering we had the front wing damage before the pit stop. So Kimi Raikkonen already doing a decent bit of recovery driving now, but as we can see we're catching up to her home favourite Sergio Perez in the Force India. So he just qualified outside the top 10 in P12 and he looks like he's not really going to challenge for any points so far unless he's already made a stop, which he hasn't because he's on the soft option tyres. So we made that move pretty convincingly on Sergio. Now we're going to get past Marcus Ericsson, who had a pretty impressive qualifying up in P6 here in Mexico. So it's a bit of a disappointment to see Sauber appearing to drop down the field there, but cutting on to lap 8, and as we can see we're in position 10 and Lewis Hamilton is in P9, just 7 seconds ahead of us. So my thinking was that Hamilton could potentially have been the race leader before all the pit stops, because of course he did qualify in pole position. So if we're 7 seconds behind the leader after all this, then this will be a pretty decent recovery drive. And once everyone makes all their pit stops, which it appears about half of the top 10 have, about 3 cars, whatever, have made the stop. And yeah, we're going to get up to P7. Okay, so 3 cars made their pit stop and we've jumped Nico Rosberg. So he was ahead of us before all the incidents, I believe. So we've made a pretty good recovery drive to get out ahead of Rosberg. And as we can see, a few more cars in the pits, and that is us up into P4 now. So pretty good recovery drive so far, has to be said. We are on the prime tyres, so we are on a slightly different strategy to the rest of the field. Now, how this is going to play out later on, I don't know, because we did make that early pit stop, as I say, on lap 3, but we're not focused on that at the minute. We're just focused on trying to catch up this Australian in front, Daniel Ricciardo. We are 9 tenths behind him, so really we should have had DRS there, but oh well, doesn't matter. We seem to have closed up in this stadium section. Of course, not only Red Bull, but pretty much everyone has to run a Monza spec around here because of the low air resistance. So you can get away with running a Monza spec car and being pretty efficient still around this circuit to get that top end speed. So looks like we're gaining in on Daniel Ricciardo. We've made 4 tenths on him just in that middle sector alone. So these prime tyres seem to be a pretty racy tyre at the minute, but we have just gone wide there, trying to close up to Daniel Ricciardo. It appears the dirty air somehow seems to be pretty effective here in Mexico. Don't really know how that would be the case, but we get a massive slide coming out of the final corner. And that's allowed Daniel Ricciardo to get a little bit of breathing space, and he's going to need it because that Red Bull Renault engine, as you can see, DRS and Kimi Raikkonen now is just making those inroads on that Red Bull, and 217 miles an hour we topped out at there. So Red Bull not really showing any pace down that straight as you'd expect. But lap 13 we come into the pits now, so we only went 10 laps on these prime tyres, which is a little bit of a worry considering how long people went on the option tyre. I believe around 6 laps or so. So we've got another set of prime tyres there. Seems like this prime tyre works out pretty well for us, but Lewis Hamilton had also come into the pits on that lap, but he's gone for another set of soft tyres, as has Nico Rosberg come into the pits. So it appears the rest of the field is just going option, option, option and just hoping for some sort of rain dance or whatever. But as you can see, Lewis Hamilton on those option tyres really doesn't seem to have the pace on us on these medium prime tyres. So it's a bit confusing how actually the slower tyre in qualifying trim, at least for me, seems to be working out really well in race pace. But we are closing up to Lewis Hamilton for second place, so someone else is currently in the lead, and Hamilton just gets a bit of a slide there. The tyres not really lasting that long, and of course this is lap 16, so his tyres will be a fair bit more worn than mine, but we're going to just nick it up the inside there, and we just squeeze him out, but we've gone too deep into that corner, and we're going to have to allow Lewis Hamilton past because of track extending, which I'm surprised the FIA didn't deem, and he's done a good job to defend that position, but we weren't really trying to fight for it. We were just trying to come back on the track basically, but Hamilton wasn't allowing any of that. But we're right up behind him through the section, so these option tyres really not working out at all well for Lewis Hamilton this race. But we're gonna just nick it up the inside here, and we've locked up, and Hamilton's tried turning in. Oh my god, incident for Lewis Hamilton and Kimi Raikkonen there. We actually made a small mistake under braking and we'd locked up, and it took us just straight on, as you can see here, and Hamilton just tried turning in But of course, we'd locked up, so not a lot we could have done about that, and the FIA didn't seem to give either of us a penalty for that, but I can't really confirm that just yet. I can't remember whether we got a penalty genuinely, but Vettel and myself having a bit of a battle here. He's on option tyres, so he's making these last pretty well, considering we're fighting him on what should be fresher prime tyres. But the rain is starting to come down, and has Sebastian Vettel come into the pits? No, he hasn't. So both Ferraris stayed out, battling on, considering the rain's coming down. You'd have thought one of us would have wanted to try and risk something to get onto the intermediate tyre through these conditions, but luckily we had DRS to defend from Vettel there. Vettel trying to go around the outside, but on the damp line, that's just not going to work. But apparently we got an illegal overtake, so we're going to allow Vettel back, and oh my lord, how can this race get any worse? Oh my lord, oh dear, oh, we are in the wars today. 5-second penalty for a severe collision. So there's Vettel just taking his race in line. We're trying to come back on the track after going slightly wide, and that just results in both of us. I try to come back on the track again without really checking if any cars were coming. So fair enough, I'll take the blame for that one. 5-second penalty, which will be applied at the end of the race. But I come into the pits for intermediate tyres now, as the rain is starting to come down a fair bit heavier. I saw a few instances from the AI as well before these pit stops, so I thought, let's give it a go, let's work out. But we're closing in on Daniel Ricciardo now, who stayed out, so I think he must have come in for the intermediate tyre as well, because a few more cars coming out of the pits as well. There's Lewis Hamilton coming out of the pits now, so we've managed to jump him even with that incident involving myself and Nico Rosberg. So I'm not really too sure how that worked out really, but we got past Daniel Ricciardo there, who too was on intermediate tyres, so everyone seems to have the same idea. Sebastian Vettel has now peeled into the pits after we were closing in on him in the 20th lap, and as you can see, he's come in for full wet tyres there, as has Daniel Ricciardo. So fairly interesting strategies there for those coming in on wet tyres. And lap 21, I decided it's now time to come in for the wet tyres. We've had enough with these intermediates. It's too wet. 1:32 that lap time was, so we were definitely struggling on these intermediates. We're probably going to be jumped by Sebastian Vettel, I would imagine now, after staying out that one lap on intermediates. And yeah, there it is. Coming out lap 22, Sebastian Vettel is 1.6 seconds ahead, so we didn't lose as much time as I thought we would have, but we definitely have lost time to our teammate, who's going to want to prove he's still the 4-time world champion we all know, love and hate at the same time. But Kimi Raikkonen, of course, being 2015 world champion, we're going to not give this up easily, as we're going to go up the inside there. Sebastian Vettel's just opened the door for us to make that move, and we're going wheel to wheel through this in-stadium section, which is a pretty neat section, I have to be honest. It's not particularly great for driving though, but as a spectacle it must look pretty cool in as a grandstand sense. But we're closing in on the back of Sebastian Vettel now. We're going to make a dummy down the inside. We can't get the car stopped though in these heavy wet conditions, so we're going to have to give our teammate Sebastian Vettel the room here. We don't want any more incidents involving ourselves and Vettel, or indeed any of the Mercedes drivers, and we're just struggling to get on the power there coming out of that corners. But now lap 28, it is time already, I feel, to come back in for intermediate tyres. And no, Seb, what are you doing? What are you doing? He's come in for inters as well by the looks of it. So someone didn't give Seb the call that we were coming in, or Seb just didn't use his logic seeing us come in and thought he'd stay out. So that's effectively P2 lost for Sebastian Vettel in this race, with only 4 laps to go now. In this race, it's myself, Lewis Hamilton, Daniel Ricciardo in the top 3 and the podium position, so just lapping the Monaco. But as you can see, it's drying out so quickly around this track, and DRS is actually enabled, so Hamilton closing in at a fair rate of knots. He's 1.8 seconds behind, so with 3 laps to go now, it's not over at all for this race. But coming on to the end of lap 31, we see our tyres are burning up, so we're going to make a brave call, come in and finally fit the option tyres in this race, so which we haven't run since the first 3 laps of the race. So it's going to be new territory for us to see what sort of pace we've got on these tyres, particularly in semi-damp conditions. But Sebastian Vettel appears to have come in the pits as well as us, so for crying out loud, it's a good job he had a decent gap this time. But since we fitted those tyres, we just had blistering pace. As you can see, 8.7 seconds ahead of Lewis Hamilton. They must have had a slow pit stop the rest of the field, because that's just crazy pace. But on lap 33 now, we are going to show, I think this is our fastest lap of the race, so you can just get an idea of how much pace we've got in the dry. 9.8 seconds now the gap, so we've gained a second about over Lewis Hamilton there, who in turn is already 4 seconds ahead of Daniel Ricciardo. So it appears as though the top 3 will be sorted, because we've only got 2 laps to go now till the end of this race. And just look at the grip we've got now with these tyres. It's definitely not even damp conditions, I'd say. You can sort of see a drying line, but so long as you stick on that line, it's not really going to be an issue. We're 10.4 seconds ahead. We're just making so much time on Lewis Hamilton. So whatever strategy they've all decided, or whatever tyres they've decided to fit, they're clearly not giving them the same performance as it is us, because we are just absolutely flying on this lap. And we're in rich fuel mix, of course, because we were saving fuel in the rain, and also lean fuel mix allows for slightly better power output in the wet conditions. But we were 11.2 ahead of Lewis Hamilton, so we are just flying through these sectors. As you can see, getting a little tail happy at the exit of the final corner for a 1:17.4. That is a blistering lap time. No one else has even got anywhere near that. The previous fastest was mine on a 1:19 on medium tyres in the middle of the race. So that is just bonkers pace from Kimi Raikkonen, proving why he is the world champion. But as you can see, coming on to the final lap, Sebastian Vettel has actually managed to get past Daniel Ricciardo. So for what I thought would be a pretty convincing top 3, Sebastian Vettel has just changed that in the last lap on the start-finish straight. But here we come, Kimi Raikkonen round the final corner to win here in Mexico from P20, and Hamilton, who hadn't even crossed the line, set a 1:16.3 apparently. GG.
A very memorable race, and one that Kimi Raikkonen won't forget anytime soon, after a wonderful win for the Ferrari driver today.
Yes, definitely. It was a brilliant race, and one that you can tell the fans really enjoyed.
Well, what a weekend that has been. Please join us next time for another thrilling instalment of this Formula One season.
So it's a good job we ended up having that pace towards the end, because we actually ended up with 8 seconds worth of penalties as that. So yeah, really good job we actually had that pace towards the end. We were 2.9 seconds ahead of Lewis Hamilton in the end, as it turned out. So that's been it for this episode. Valtteri Bottas, who was on the front row, actually DNFing there, so unfortunate here for him. But that's been the Mexican Grand Prix. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe for more F1 2015 Kimi Raikkonen career mode. We've already won the championship. We've probably won the constructors as well. So that's it from me, and until next time guys, take care.